Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're tuning in to. Welcome to a live stream with Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. You know the drill. We're retired New York City police detectives and 9/11 World Trade Center first responders. Today, we're going to bring to you live the Bryan Kohberger plea hearing. He's going to change his plea to guilty of murder of the four University of Idaho college students. That's Xana Ethan Chapin, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Gonzalez. There's a lot of people who are angry about this, and there's mixed emotions. And Ed and I, we share those mixed emotions and that anger. But at the end of the day, we have to honor what the victims' families feel, and they're split. It seems like two and two, different opinions. Ed, your thoughts going into this?
Yeah, I'm very aggravated. I don't think this was handled properly by the prosecution. I believe that they should have consulted in person with each of the families of the victims and discussed what was going on and why they were coming to this decision to offer this deal. In addition, I feel that they were able to make this negotiation with the defense team, and I don't understand why they didn't negotiate the fact that Bryan should get up there and explain exactly what he did. He's going to spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of parole. Okay, so for that alone, he should have been forced to say exactly what he did, confess to what he did. Okay. And I don't understand the prosecution at all.
Yeah, I agree, Ed. I share your anger as it pertains to this. And at the end of the day, sending an email to victims' families with an attachment to it. Let us know what you think in the chat. We put a poll up in the chat. There is a poll that's up. Please go over and vote on that poll. But yeah, I mean, you put yourself in the position of these victims' families. They lost their young adult children who, and I call them children because, people try to correct us on that. No matter how old your son or daughter is, they're always going to be your child. It doesn't matter. I have a son who's in his 30s. Ed, what are you doing?
Mike, is it look to you that the camera's out of focus?
It is a little bit. I'm going to play this little clip, and maybe you could fix that while we play this. And I'll go back to my thoughts.
This morning in Idaho, murder suspect Bryan Kohberger is apparently just hours away from accepting a plea deal that will save him from facing the death penalty amid new reactions from those tied to the case. The family of victim Kaylee Gonzalez has been furious with the prosecution.
They were done fighting. They had given up.
And now asking for the public's help, urging supporters to contact the local prosecutor's office and the Department of Justice, and also asking for, quote, the true facts of what happened that night, along with a full confession. Kohberger was arrested and charged in late 2022 with the murders of Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, Xana Ethan, and Madison Mogan. Prosecutors say DNA found on a knife sheath at the crime scene that matched Kohberger's is just one piece of the mountain of evidence against him. His lawyers say he has maintained his innocence. While the Gonzalez family wanted Kohberger to face trial and the death penalty, Ethan Chapin's family telling NBC News that they support the plea deal. In 2023, Ethan's mother, Stacy, shared with Today why they would not attend the trial.
It does not change the outcome of our family, and it just is energy that doesn't feel like it's well spent.
The
Ron, your mic's off.
Thank you. The reason I paused it, I said, Ed and I, you guys, we covered that interview that Stacy Chapin did in 2023. And she made a great point. She said, no matter what the outcome is, no matter what happens in this proceeding, I'm not going to get my son back. Everybody else is not going to have their daughters back. So she made a valid point, but that is her position. And it doesn't mean that all the rest of the families have to agree to it. There's four separate families here that have two sides to it. They have a mom and a dad, and aunts, uncles, and everybody in between. So I thought that's why I stopped it. And thank you for telling me that my mic was muted. But I thought Stacey Chapin spoke very well for her family and for what her and her husband agreed to. It doesn't mean that everyone has to be on the same page, and we just have to respect that. Right, Ed?
Oh, 100%, 100%. You're not going to get full consensus on any issue. So, it's 50-50 split amongst the families here. But I know that many of us in the criminal justice system, like myself and you, would prefer DP over what's going on here. But again, any case is a crapshoot. Okay. Right. Especially when you're in front of a jury like this. If it was a judge trial with the amount of evidence that was present here, I would be a little more comfortable with the DP, with a judge, as opposed to a jury. But it is what it is. The bottom line is, while the family of the victims can voice their opinions, the prosecution has the final say. Well, technically, the judge has the final say on any plea deal.
Right.
Let's see if the judge steps in and says, okay, yeah, I'm going to agree to this, but I'm going to need a little more. But I doubt it.
Right. I highly doubt that. And a lot of people in the chat are asking that question. And it's a valid question, because we all we come last. But the families, we heard from, Kaylee Gonzalez's dad. He was on Vanfield, he was on all the different news outlets, and he said, the prosecution let me down, let my family down. We want to hear the details, and we want this guy to receive what he deserves at the end of a trial, which is the death penalty by firing squad there in Idaho. Look, the bottom line here is that even with it going the way that Mr. Gonzalez wanted it to go, you would look at 20 plus years of appeals and, stalling this death penalty from happening. So we could look at 20, 30, maybe even more years of Bryan Kohberger still being alive. With this, now he gets to rot. He gets to rot from the inside out, inside a cell, inside a facility that has bugs and roaches and things crawling all over him at night, and also nowhere near what he saw and what he had been housed here in county jail will he have in an Idaho state maximum prison. So Bryan Kohberger, make no mistake, with this sentence, with 4 life sentences, he will not have any good days. Yeah, he may have some rec time, he may have this, he may have that tablet that people talk about, he may have this, but everything that he does while incarcerated is going to be a struggle. There are inmates there that are murderers alongside him. He's going to eventually be in with population. And we know, we talk to many executives and professionals from the corrections field. You can't protect him for his whole life. He's going to, I'm talking his whole life inside maximum security prison. He's going to have a struggle every day with going to the shower, with going to the mess hall, with going to the library, or wherever he goes. He's going to have to worry about somebody getting him, because these guys that he's around, it's only going to be males, are all bad, super, super bad people. And he may not be a hero in there, because maybe one of them has a daughter, maybe one of them has a son, that these are innocent victims that he took their lives. So maybe some of these really bad guys might not really like what he did. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
And given some of his meal issues and his, I think they said he may have OCD or whatever the case may be. It's different than what he's experiencing now in jail, because he's in a jail, right? And he's pretty much isolated for the most part. But when he goes to Gen Pop in a prison, it's going to be a different life that I'm not too sure how he's going to handle that.
Yeah, the Idaho Maximum Security Institution is in Pleasant Valley Road in Kuna, Idaho. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Is it Kuna? It has 545 maximum residents. They call them residents, but prisoners. So it's a smaller maximum security facility that's just for males. Chad Daybell is there. We like to call him Chud Daybell, but Chad Daybell is there. He's sentenced for the murder of his wife and the two kids. So Chad Daybell is at that location. Bryan Kohberger is not going to have one good day. He's not going to have air conditioning to his liking, heat to his liking, bedding to his liking, food to his liking. There's going to be struggles everywhere he looks. And these inmates will home in on him because remember, he's not a career criminal. This is his first arrest. He's got no criminal history. There's many guys in there that have graduated up the line, starting out with low-level crimes and then building up to murders. So he's going to be around a lot of bad guys, and they're going to see him. He's going to be prey, and they are going to go. They're going to go right at him, and he is going to have a hard time. Let's listen to the rest of this, and I'm watching the feed. Once the court comes up, we'll go right to the court. We want to take your questions as well.
Support the plea deal. In 2023, Ethan's mother, Stacy, shared with Today why they would not attend a trial.
It does not change the outcome of our family, and it just is energy that doesn't feel like it's well spent.
The deal is still coming as a surprise to legal experts.
I was shocked by it. It seems like a situation that it would have happened a long time ago versus, we're on the cusp of the trial starting in this case.
Why would the prosecution want to accept this as opposed to going to trial?
They ensure that Bryan Kohberger is likely never going to see the light of day. And then they take what would almost assuredly be, if he was convicted, just years and years of appellate proceedings just off the table.
Overnight, Kohberger's family releasing a brief statement asking for privacy, respect, and responsible judgment during this time. At the University of Idaho, some students relieved.
Maybe it's time for there to be true healing, to know that there's been resolution.
After years of delays and unanswered questions, what was supposed to be one of the most watched murder trials in years could now be wrapped up within weeks.
So, Liz, what are some of the questions, and there are many, but what are some that we might get answers to at that hearing that's going to start in a few hours?
Yeah, well, Craig, first and foremost, we're hoping to get more details and clarity on this plea deal. Remember, there's a gag order in place, so neither the defense or the prosecution have confirmed this.
Ed, this is a really good comment right here. Sarah Brome says, the plea deal saves the taxpayers millions, but we talked about this on the last live stream we did. This has cost Latah County and the people of the state of Idaho probably close to over $1 million at this point.
Yeah, without a doubt, with all the delays that have been going on, all the motions put on by the defense.
Yeah, but very good comment. We appreciate the comments in the chat, and thank you to the replay viewers, the moderators, the super chatters, everybody that supports us here on Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. I'm monitoring in my office 3 or 4 different live feeds. I'm at the court live feed. I'm looking at Court TV and Law and Crime. So don't worry. When this thing kicks off, we will have the coverage for you.
Or commented on it. We are hoping to get those specifics. And remember, we don't know what he's going to have to do here. Will it be more than pleading guilty? Will he have to answer some of those critical questions that some of the family members were hoping would come out during trial, particularly around motive and where is that murder weapon, Craig?
All right.
Yeah, those are big things that people want to know. What was his motive? Where's the murder weapon? How did he commit these murders? These are questions that people were asking for answers. But Lauren, I'm glad you asked this question. It costs about $36,500 a year. This is according to 2023 statistics at the actual prison in Idaho. That's what they reported. That's their numbers, not mine. I looked it up. So if Bryan Kohberger was at that, with that money to, cost for housing, if he survived he's 30 years old, for another 60 years, say he'd survive to 90, which is not probable. Inside jail, inside prison, prison is not your time well spent. You do not get good nutrition. Everything is low key, is low budget. So let's just argue that he lives for 60 years, which is probably not probable. It would cost $2.2 million to house Bryan Kohberger. I did the math on it. You guys can check it out. So that's the cost. That's what we're looking at. If he survives till 90, if he survives till 80 or 70, you could just do the deductions there. Ed, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, no matter how you look at it, it's an expense. And, which is more expensive, going the DP route and then going through all the appeals or housing him? I don't know where the numbers kind of cross over, but is it always about the money?
Yeah.
I'm sure for the two families that want the DP, it's not about the money and the appeals. It's more about, in their mind, justice.
Correct. Let's take a listen to one of the victims' families talk on News Nation as we wait for this hearing to come up. The hearing, as soon as it starts, we'll go live to it.
But not all of the victims' families feel this way. Ethan Chapin's mom told me that her family will be attending me here tomorrow in the courthouse and that they support the plea deal. She said they are coming here in support of the plea deal. And Maddie Mogan's father told the Idaho Statesman newspaper that he supports the deal if it means avoiding a trial that would reopen old wounds. I can also confirm that Bryan Kohberger's family will be at the hearing tomorrow, although their family attorney issued the following statement. We just got this statement a little while ago. I'm going to read it to you. It says, in light of recent developments, the Kohbergers are asking members of the media for privacy, respect, and responsible judgment during this time. We will continue to allow the legal process to unfold with respect to all parties and will not release any comments or take any questions. We ask that you respect our wishes during a difficult time for all of those affected. Again, that statement.
Some people were outraged, Ed, by that statement from the Kohberger family. But one thing that they did say at the end, and I'm sure the attorneys advised them to say this, we ask that you respect our wishes during a difficult time for all those affected. So that's in my opinion, that's an opinion. That's a comment that was perhaps suggested by an attorney. Ed, somebody in the chat said something about Bryan Kohberger profiting off of these crimes with books and so forth. I know you're very well versed as it pertains to that. And I know the answer to.
In New York, we have the Son of Sam law, which says that a criminal convicted of a heinous crime like this cannot profit from the crime. But that's not necessarily the case in Idaho. Okay.
Yeah, they may call it something different, but most states have a similar law on the books as the Son of Sam law. I remember in Florida, there's something, it's called something different. But so Bryan Kohberger at this point, people are talking about, oh, well, he'll make money off of books and this and that and the other. It's I highly doubt it, folks. We'll look up what Idaho has, and somebody says, here's our good friend Cindy Holenbeck. Thank you, Cindy, for being here. She says Idaho law, she's from Idaho, says that the money he earns has to go to the state treasury. So he will not profit off of it. It'll go back to Idaho, which he's costing Idaho, as we know, $36,500 a year just to be housed in the maximum security facility. That's for the facility that I mentioned. We don't know where he's going to be sent to, but ideally, the Idaho Max Security Institution is where he'll go, and that's right on Pleasant Valley Road in Kuna, Idaho. Let's let the rest of this play because it was pretty interesting. Again, I apologize, but Bryan Ethan was out on the street or in front of the courthouse, and so you could hear the traffic. That's on his end and not ours.
It just came in. Joining me here right now in Boise tonight is national reporter for the New York Times, Mike Baker. Mike, it's always nice to see you. Mike and I have sat together in many of the court hearings here. You've sort of been like my seatmate here and also in Moscow. I'm curious what you think about tomorrow. We know there's going to be the plea deal, but do you think we'll hear a confession? Do you think we're going to get details about a motive and what actually happened?
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things is I think Judge Hickler actually has an option here. I was looking back at some of the more high-profile cases that resulted in a plea agreement, and one of the ones that stood out was the BTK serial killer. I mean, he I was looking back through the transcript of that hearing, and it was extremely detailed. I mean, the judge in that case accepted the plea and then asked a range of questions. How did you identify your victims? Each one went one by one. What kind of methods were you using? What kind of tools were you using? Why? And you know, that case lasted a long time. That hearing lasted a long time, got into a lot of horrific things. So I think that is an option for Judge Hitler. But as you noted, like this plea agreement doesn't require that of Bryan Kohberger, doesn't have to say anything. The Idaho rules of criminal procedure don't spell out a sort of requirement for them to, a defendant to have to spell out the details of what had transpired. But it's sort of interesting to see if Judge Hitler takes a step of demanding some answers in this case.
I'm wondering if Judge Hitler is watching some of the statements from the families who want answers and may take that into consideration tomorrow, knowing that they're not happy, some of them with the plea deal, and thinking, let me do this for them. Let me go a little farther and see what I can get out of Kohberger.
Yeah. I heard today from Xana Ethan's dad, Jeff, and he really actually brought up that exact thing. He disagreed with the prosecution's decision in this case to do this plea deal. He thought, one, there was this measure of accountability that was necessary. He sort of implied a talk of deterrence, that someone who commits this kind of crime needs a level of accountability so that others won't do it. But the other thing he did bring up was he was disappointed that the plea deal didn't require something of Bryan Kohberger, of saying, here's why I did it, giving these families some answers, because they've spent these 2.5 years really in the dark as to a motive or any reasoning as to why their sons and daughters were killed.
Are you surprised? I mean, you've been on this case since the beginning. Were you surprised when you found out about the plea deal? Were you planning on there being a trial?
I was expecting a trial after the last few weeks. At the same time, I'm usually not surprised at a plea deal in a murder case. You know, it's often an off-road for the prosecution to provide certainty, right? It's a guarantee of life in prison versus the uncertainty of taking this thing to jury. And I just point out, in Idaho, even a state like this that generally supports the death penalty, has inmates on death row. It's been more than a decade since they've executed someone. And I was thinking back to last year, they attempted an execution here and botched it. And now that defendant, who has been on death row for 40 years, more than 40 years, 4 decades, that people in that case have been waiting for that kind of resolution to come.
So there you have it. I didn't even hear that part, Ed. There was a prisoner recently that was sentenced to death after 40 years, and they botched it in Idaho. So again, I feel like it's up to the families on how they feel. It's not really up to us. But at the end of the day, 4 life sentences plus 10 years for the burglary charge. And people were questioning the burglary charge. I have video of Bill Thompson explaining it in the beginning. The reporters are not allowed to take video inside the courtroom. 50 public and media attendees total in the courtroom, a total of 50 people from the public and the media. Family have unlimited room observed for them to come in. But the AP will be able to take still shots and photographs from inside. So we'll see still pictures of Bryan Kohberger in high definition, courtesy of the AP. This is all as per Judge Hitler's orders. I went and read them. Ed, your thoughts?
What's the delay here? They were supposed to start, what, 15 minutes ago?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Looking at the court will resume shortly message. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm looking at. So hopefully they get everybody settled in, and we let's go to the chat. Let's go to the chat and see what everybody's saying. You know, people are saying prison justice, right? That's always an inherent risk of an inmate, a new inmate, somebody like Bryan Kohberger. That's kind of awkward, right? He's not socially. He's not somebody who gets to be social comfortably, and in prison, that's not going to work well. It's not going to work well for him.
You know, his professor said that he was one of her best students. That's why she gave him a rare recommendation for the PhD candidacy. Okay, so thank you from South Africa for your super chat.
We appreciate.
But yeah. He he thought he was smarter than he was. And, you know, he thought he dotted his I's and crossed his T's, but he didn't.
Yeah, he damn sure didn't. I like to go to local news, and this is from, I guess, local Idaho news, Kings 5. Actually, it's Seattle, and they interviewed, I believe, Xana Ethan's dad. Maybe not. But it was an interview with one of the family members, and look, I listed it here. Xana Ethan is going to turn 23 on Saturday, July 5th. Her family does not want this plea deal. Ethan Chapman, his family, we heard from his mom, supports the prosecution. Madison Mogan's father sat down with, I believe it was News Nation, one of the locals, and he said he supports the decision to take the plea deal. We know that Kaylee Gonzalez's family, they are outraged. They're out, they're speaking loud and clear, and they're looking to start petitions and so forth. Ed, did you see any of that coverage where Gonzalez, Steve, was on local? Your thoughts on that, Ed?
Well, he's very upset. Feels let down by the prosecution team. He feels that because they voiced objections to certain things in the investigation and prosecution, that he was put on the.
We have the court live, Ed.
Present
Okay.
with Mr. Thompson, Mr. Horowitz.
I'm going to mute my mic.
Jennings. Mr. Nye is here as well. Am I miss anybody? I'm sorry.
Ms. Allen is here as well.
Ms. Allen is here as well. Very well, thank you. All right, we are here today to entertain a change of plea. Before I start, I want to address some issues of concern and otherwise. First, I appreciate everybody in attendance today being on their best behavior. Please, no outbursts or demonstrations. Any such conduct will result in immediate removal and may result in an inability to attend further court proceedings in this case. By some for the public to contact me and my office in an attempt to influence my decision-making in this case. This has been extraordinarily disruptive for court staff and the ability for them to get work done, not only in this case, but in other cases where defendants are entitled to have their cases processed, and frankly, as important, if not more so, for victims to have their cases. It's also highly inappropriate. A court is not supposed to, and this court will never take into account public sentiment in making an opinion regarding its judicial decisions in cases. Court should, and I always will, make decisions based on where the facts and the law lead me, period. I have not read any of the numerous messages nor listened to any of the numerous voicemails that have been sent to me and my staff where appropriate to law enforcement. I ask that you not continue to mount such campaigns or to send me information like this, because again, it is not appropriate and frankly not something I would take into account when deciding a matter in a case like this. I also want people to understand some very basic concepts about the ideas of separation of powers, what the court's duties are, and what the duties and the rights of the executive, or in this case, the prosecuting attorney, is. The executive, the elected prosecutor, is the sole authority in deciding what charges to pursue, including what penalties to ask for and what penalties to pursue, including the death penalty. This court cannot require the prosecutor to seek the death penalty, nor would it be appropriate for this court to attempt to do that. This court, in considering a plea agreement, if it were to reject this plea agreement, cannot force the state to seek the death penalty. My role and power in considering a plea agreement is extremely limited. My role is to ensure that the defendant's plea is given freely, voluntarily, and intelligently. If those things are met, I can only reject a plea, such as the one in this case, where I'm not being asked to agree to the sentence in advance. If I can only reject it, for example, if the defendant does not meet or admit to all of the elements of the crime. That is, I can ensure what is called a factual basis to the plea. Finally, I want to offer my apologies to all the families of the defendant for the short notice for today's hearing, and I'm sure what must have been the hurried efforts to get here. I, like most everyone else, learned of this plea agreement Monday afternoon and had no inkling of it beforehand. Prior to that time, I was under the belief that this case was proceeding to trial, as had been indicated, and my staff and I were busy continuing to work on preparations to have potentially 10,000 citizens of Ada County come to jury duty starting in mid-July with the questionnaire process in mid-July. It was once I learned of the defendant's decision that I take the plea as soon as possible because of the extraordinary administrative efforts that were otherwise attendant to the process of this getting this trial potentially underway on time, and including the significant process of bringing, again, potentially up to 10,000 jurors to come in and fill out juror questionnaires prior to the beginning of the voir dire process. And so it was important that we go down this road, do so expeditiously so that we can avoid those costs and expenses associated with that. Otherwise, if it was not going to result in a plea, or if for some reason the plea were to fall through today, that we could continue diligently towards trial at the time specified. And so that obviously required that we act quickly. And so some folks may wise allow for them to travel here. And so again, I apologize for that. I want to make people aware that during the hearing, if you are to leave the courtroom for any reason, you will not be readmitted during the hearing. Also, when we finish the hearing this morning, I ask that the public and media wait in their seats until the victims' families and the defendants' families and others are escorted out of the courtroom before you start to leave. Finally, I want to acknowledge the trial court administrator and her staff, the Ada County Sheriff, and Ada County for the huge lift that they've accomplished in preparing for and orchestrating this hearing today, as well as to all the security attendant today that you see, and some of whom many of whom you don't see, with less than 48 hours notice. And so I appreciate the hard work that they've been doing. Frankly, some of them while they were on some vacation prior to the trial starting and had to call that short. And so I appreciate very much their professionalism and dedication. All right. That said, let's move to the business of today. defense have reached a plea agreement in this case. For the record, I have a written plea agreement which indicates in sum, the defendant will plead guilty to all 5 counts in the indictment, burglary, felony, and first-degree murder, 4 counts. The state and the defendant stipulate, that is, that the defense is not free to argue for a lesser sentence at sentencing to the following. The defendant on the burglary charge will be sentenced to 10 years fixed, and that the defendant of first-degree homicide on each count would receive a fixed life sentence, all 5 of those counts to run consecutive to one another. Defendant, as part of the plea agreement, waives his right to appeal, as well as his right to appeal the sentence and his right to seek leniency or reconsideration of the sentence under Idaho Criminal Rule 35. This is not a Rule 11 agreement, meaning the court is not bound by the plea agreement and could impose a different lawful sentence at sentencing. The stipulated agreement between the parties is the maximum on each count, so theoretically the only thing at sentencing. But the defendant is not free to ask the court to do so under the plea agreement. Are there any other material terms of the plea agreement that the parties would like to make? Obviously, the plea agreement, the written plea agreement will speak for itself and be part of the court record.
Not from the state, Your Honor. Thank you.
Kohberger is right here.
All right, very well.
To the right.
All right. Ms. Taylor, have you had sufficient time to discuss this case and all of its ramifications with your client?
I have, Your Honor.
Have you discussed fully with him his rights, defenses, and possible consequences to him of the guilty plea?
Yes, Your Honor.
Have you been able to do all the discovery you feel necessary?
Yes, Your Honor.
And have you informed your client of the importance of providing the court truthful and accurate answers in taking this plea today?
I have.
Have you apprised your client of any and all offers and counter offers and answered his questions about those?
Yes.
Do you consent to the entry of the plea today?
I do.
All right, Mr. Kohberger, I need to ask you some questions this afternoon, or I guess it's this morning still. So that I am assured that you understand the nature of the charges to which I understand you're going to plead guilty, as well as the possible consequences to you of your guilty pleas. I want to make sure your plea is given voluntarily, and I want to make sure that you actually committed the crimes to which you're pleading guilty, because I don't want you to plead guilty to a crime you didn't commit. If you attempt to plead guilty today, but for some reason I don't accept your plea, then it is possible that your statements today could be used against you later at trial. Do you understand that?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And now, while you're standing, actually, why don't you take the oath from the clerk?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in the matter not in the court of court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right, and Mr. Kohberger, just to make it easier, you don't need to stand when you speak to me. I appreciate the sign of respect, but for convenience, you can remain seated, all right? Before I start asking you questions today, have you consumed, substantive questions, let me ask you, have you consumed any alcohol, drug, or other intoxicating substance that would impair your ability to understand or exercise reasonable judgment?
No. Yes.
All right, I want you to understand what the possible penalties are for each of the crimes to which I understand you're going to offer a guilty plea today. They include on count 1, the burglary, a fine of up to $50,000 and a period of incarceration of up to 10 years in the state penitentiary. You may be required to pay restitution to any victims of the crime. Count 2, 3, 4, and 5 for first-degree murder. The consequences include a fine of up to $50,000, a period of imprisonment, which is a requirement of a sentence, that it be a life sentence with a mandatory minimum sentence of at least 10 years on each of those counts. In addition, you would be potentially responsible for a fine of up to $5,000 to each of the victims of your crime, to be enforced in the form of a civil judgment, to operate as additional punishment. This is in excess of any restitution or fines that the court could order. And again, you may be required to pay restitution to the victims of the crime. You would be required to provide, as to counts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, a DNA sample and a right thumbprint impression, and potentially lose any right to possess, purchase, or carry a firearm, the right to serve on jury duty, the right to hold public office, and the right to vote. Do you understand the charges and all those possible consequences?
Yes.
You've heard the plea agreement that I talked about today. Do you agree with that plea agreement?
Yes.
And do you understand the nature of the charges that you've been charged with, that I understand you're going to plead guilty today to?
Yes.
As I indicated, I'm not bound by the plea agreement, but the plea agreement is for the maximum on each count. Do you understand that I'm not bound by the plea agreement?
Yes.
Has anyone promised you that I would be lenient or easy on you if you pled guilty?
No.
Has anyone threatened you or anyone close to you to get you to plead guilty?
No.
Has anyone other than the state's agreements with respect to the plea agreement, has anyone promised you anything in exchange for your plea agreement?
No.
Has anyone told you to be untruthful in answering my questions today?
No.
Has anyone offered you a reward of any kind other than the plea agreement?
No.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes.
And counsel, obviously there have been a number of motions filed to suppress evidence in this case. Other than those filed, are there any other motions that you felt were available with respect to Rule 12?
No, Your Honor.
And Mr. Kohberger, do you understand that by entering the guilty plea in this case, you would be giving up your right to appeal any decision this court made, as well as your sentence? Have you had enough time to decide whether or not to plead guilty?
Yes.
Are you pleading guilty freely and voluntarily?
Yes.
Given your choices, do you believe it's in your best interest to plead guilty?
Yes.
Have you discussed fully the matter of pleading guilty with your attorney, and are you satisfied with the advice you've received?
Yes.
Has your attorney advised you to your satisfaction about what your rights are, what your defenses may be, and what the possible consequences to you of your guilty plea are?
Yes.
Has your attorney done everything you've asked them to do?
Yes.
Are you satisfied with their representation of you?
Yes.
I have received a written guilty plea advisory questionnaire that is purported to be filled out by you. Did you fill that document out?
Yes.
Did you understand the questions that you answered in this document?
Yes.
And are the answers that are outlined in this document your answers?
Yes.
Are those answers truthful?
Yes.
Did you sign the document?
Yes.
And this document outlines many of the rights that you have in this case. Should you not plead guilty, did you understand those rights?
Yes.
They include a right to a jury trial. Do you understand that?
Yes.
They include a right to the presumption of innocence. Do you understand that?
Yes.
You have the right to require the state to prove your guilt as to each element beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you understand that?
Yes.
They include a right to confront your accusers and cross-examine witnesses presented by the state, including by utilizing the subpoena power of the court to accomplish that. Do you understand that? You understand you would have a privilege against self-incrimination and a right to remain silent, meaning you would not be compelled to testify if you did not wish to, had you not pled guilty.
Yes.
You understand you're giving up that privilege and those rights that I've just outlined by pleading guilty.
Yes.
All right, I want you to understand what the state would have had to have proven at trial had you, to the crimes that you're pleading guilty to, had you, if you didn't plead guilty. Let me find the document. Hang on a second here. All right. So as to count one burglary, the state would have to have proven that on or about November 13, 2022 in Latah County, Idaho, you unlawfully entered a residence located at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder. As to count two, the state would have had to have proven that on or about that same date in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice of forethought, kill and murder Madison Mogan, a human being, by stabbing Madison Mogan, from which she died. As to count three, the state would have had to have proven that on that same date in Latah County, at that same address, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice of forethought, kill and murder Kaylee Gonzalez, a human being, by stabbing her, from which she died. As to count four, the state would have had to have proven that on or about that same date in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice of forethought, kill and murder Xana Ethan, a human being, by stabbing her, from which she died. And then as to count five, also murder in the 15th, 2022, in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice of forethought, kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being, by stabbing him, from which he died. Do you understand those things the state would have had to have proven?
Yes.
And do you understand that by pleading guilty, the state no longer has to prove those things because you're admitting those things are true?
Yes.
I want to also make, for the record, the defendant has provided with the guilty plea advisory form factual basis that purports to have the defendant's signature dated 1 July 2025. Did you sign that document?
Yes.
And did you agree with the written factual basis that is included there?
Yes.
And then let me ask you, did you, 2022, enter the residence at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder?
Yes.
Did you, on November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, kill and murder Madison Mogan, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice of forethought?
Yes.
Did you, on or about that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Kaylee Gonzalez, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice of forethought? Did you, on that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Xana Ethan, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
And then on or about November 13th, 2022, again in Latah County, Idaho, did you kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being?
Yes.
Did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
I would ask the state at this time to factual basis had this case gone to trial.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, the organization of the resuscitation is different than what I think the court and the public may be familiar with from the probable cause affidavit and other documents. The state's evidence, as an overview, would show that back in March of 2022, when the defendant was residing at his parents' residence or was residing back in Pennsylvania, his home state, he purchased online a K-bar knife and sheath with an Amazon gift card that he had to the knife, sheath, and sharpener. Jumping ahead, the end of June of that year, the defendant, Mr. Kohberger, moved from Pennsylvania to Pullman, Washington, which is right across the state line from Moscow, Idaho, for the purpose of pursuing a PhD in criminal justice at Washington State University. The state's evidence would indicate that beginning July 9th of 2022, Mr. Kohberger's phone began connecting to a cell tower that serves the area of the 1122 King Road residence in Moscow, Idaho. Now, I will acknowledge for the court and all present that there are many residences in that area. It's a dense population of mostly college-related between July 9th of 2022 and November 7th, the defendant's phone connected to that particular tower during late night, early morning hours, 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., on approximately 23 times. Now, I will acknowledge also, we do not have evidence that the defendant had direct contact with 1122 or with residents of 1122, but we can put his phone in that area on those times. In the interim, on August 22nd of 2022, Latah County Sheriff's Deputy Darren Duke conducted a traffic stop in the early morning hour or late evening hours, about 11 p.m. On the west side of Moscow, on Moscow-Pullman Road. This was a traffic stop of Mr. Kohberger's car, which turned out 15 white Hyundai Elantra with Pennsylvania plates. During the course of the traffic stop, Deputy Duke was able to obtain Mr. Kohberger's name, Bryan Kohberger, his phone number, and his address, which at that point was an apartment address in Pullman. Within June, the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, the state's evidence would show that early morning hours on that day, Mr. Kohberger's phone left his Pullman residence, which is an apartment in kind of the central northwest part of Pullman. That phone was then subsequently turned off at approximately 2:54 a.m. and remained off until approximately 4:48 a.m. on Sunday, the 13th of November. The state's evidence would include a trial, video service on the Moscow-Pullman Highway, just across the state line from Moscow. It would show a vehicle matching the description of the defendant's Hyundai Elantra entering Moscow at approximately 3:02 a.m. Compiled surveillance that the investigators put together from businesses and residents then show the defendant's car, the white Elantra, as I've described, circling the 1122 King Road area, that neighborhood, starting around 3:30 or so in the morning. Comes into the immediate area of 1122 King Road, which is actually on a dead end, and then leaves several times. At approximately 4:05 that morning, the defendant's car had entered that area, was leaving, stopped at the intersection of King and Queen Road. Did a use to show that the defendant's car came back and parked behind and above the 1122 King Road residence. The state believes that its evidence would then show that the defendant entered the residence of 1122 through the kitchen sliding door on the back side of the residence, which is the side of the residence that would face the area above where the defendant's car was parked. Defendant entered the residence, went to the 3rd floor, and with a knife, killed Madison Mogan. And the defendant, as he left that room, for whatever reason, ended up leaving, or the sheath for a K-bar knife was left on the bed next to Madison Mogan's body. And I can jump ahead. That sheath was tested by the Idaho State Police Forensic Lab, and single source male DNA was found on the snap of that sheath, as well as blood from both Kaylee and Madison and other trace evidence. But it's important to note single source male DNA was on the snap of that sheath. The state's evidence would show that Xana Ethan was still awake at this time. In fact, had taken a DoorDash order not long before this started. Her room was not on the 3rd floor, it was on the 2nd floor on the west side. As the defendant was either coming down the stairs or leaving, he ended up killing her, also with a large knife. Ethan Chapin, Xana's boyfriend, was asleep in their bedroom, in her bedroom, and the defendant killed him as well with a large fixed-blade knife. Each victim suffered multiple wounds. I will state for the record, component of sexual assault on any of the victims. I want to make that clear so there's no speculation. There were 2 other roommates in the house, and they were already asleep. During the course of this, one of those roommates awoke, looked out her door not knowing what was going on, and saw the defendant, who was dressed in black with black balaclava on, holding some sort of container in his hand. And she saw him leave the house through the direction of the kitchen where that sliding door is that I mentioned before. At approximately 4:20 that morning, and 15 minutes or so later, the defendant's car is seen on a surveillance camera for 1112 King Road, which is immediately next door to the west of 1122, leaving the area at a high rate of speed. And if the court were to see that, or anybody in this courtroom were to see that, you can see the car almost loses control as it makes the corner, heads north, and then turns to go south on Walenta, which is one of the only ways to get out of that part of town. The evidence would show that following that, the defendant in his Elantra drove south of Moscow. We know that he drove on the back roads because they're highways, Highway 95. It would have picked up the defendant's car if he'd gone that route. And they did not show the defendant's car on that route during the time. So we know that he went through a variety of back roads in very rural, isolated part of Latah County. About 4:48 that morning, the defendant's phone comes back on. And the evidence will show that that phone was located south of Moscow, likely at a side road intersection with Highway 95. From there, the defendant's phone back north towards Pullman, Washington, where the defendant lived. About 5:26, starting at approximately 5:26, various surveillance cameras in Pullman, Washington pick up the defendant's vehicle as he enters Pullman from the south and heads north and slightly west towards his apartment, where he arrives at approximately 5:30 in the morning. Later that morning, Sunday, the 13th of November of 2022, Mr. Kohberger's phone returned to the area of King Road. We don't know exactly what he did, but it returned to that area. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning, then returned to his Pullman residence. About 9:30, the state's evidence will show, evidence taken from the defendant's phone, that he took a selfie of himself on his phone in what appears to be the bathroom of his Pullman apartment with a thumbs up. The defendant's phone then went to the Lewiston-Clarkson Valley, approximately 30 miles south of Moscow and Pullman, and the defendant is actually seen with his car at various businesses down there. This area is the confluent river. Lewiston is Idaho's seaport. Large bodies of moving water down there. In addition to tracing the defendant's activities, as I've just outlined, on the 13th and leading up to the 13th, the state's evidence will show that following Sunday, November 13th, 2022, business records show that the defendant began searching for a K-bar knife and a K-bar knife sheath, as the state believes, to replace the one that was left at the scene of the murders. The evidence also will suggest that there were at least attempts by the defendant to delete or alter his actions had occurred. Later that week, the state's evidence will show that Mr. Kohberger went to what we would call DMV, motor vehicle licensing here in Idaho, in Pullman, to change his car registration from Pennsylvania to Washington. That's of note because Pennsylvania cars do not require a front license plate. The vehicles seen on the surveillance cameras of the defendant's car showed it didn't have a front license plate on it. At the time of the traffic stop by Deputy Duke in August, it was Pennsylvania plate, no front license plate. Mr. Kohberger proceeded to finish his semester of studies at Washington State University. Law enforcement at this point were aware Mr. Kohberger had been accessing information about him, were trying to find him. They located him in Pennsylvania, and they conducted what's called a trash pull. During the nighttime hours, agents of the FBI, who assisted immensely with this case, working with the sanitation department back in this neighborhood in Pennsylvania, took trash that had been set out on the street for collection from the Pennsylvania residence of the defendant's parents to the Idaho State Forensic Laboratory, where the lab experts there were able to identify DNA on a Q-tip as coming from the father of the person whose DNA was found on the knife sheath that was next to Madison Logan's body in the bed. Subsequently, an arrest warrant was issued here in Idaho, and a search warrant was issued in the state of Pennsylvania with the assistance not only of the FBI, but the Pennsylvania State Police. Mr. Kohberger was arrested at his parents' home to return to Idaho. Upon his return to Idaho, a DNA sample was taken from him, and it matched next to Maddie's body at the crime scene. I can tell the court, and the public, the weapon itself, the knife, has not yet been recovered. I can tell the court that the defendant's apartment in Pullman was searched, as well as his office. Spartan would be a kind characterization. There was virtually nothing there. Nothing of evidentiary value was found. And of course, we are now talking 6-8 weeks after the time of the killings. In Pennsylvania, the defendant's car was seized, and it was actually pretty much disassembled internally. And it also had been cleaned. There was a bucket of clean and right beside it. I think we can all look to our doors. We can try to keep them clean where you put stuff. There's always some degree of crud in there. They were spotless. The defendant's car had been meticulously cleaned inside. And the state would present to the jury that that was part of the defendant's plan in covering up this. The defendant has studied crime. In fact, he did a detailed paper on crime scene processing when he was working on his pre-doctorate degrees, and he had that knowledge and skill. So, Your Honor, at the end, the state submits that the evidence that I've given just a quick overview of, and that to present in court would consume weeks prepared to do, would show that as the defendant has just admitted and pleaded guilty on November 13th, 2022, excuse me, Mr. Kohberger entered the residence of 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. He did that with the intent to kill. We will not represent that he intended to commit all of the murders that he did that night, but we know that that is what resulted, and that he then killed deliberately with premeditation and with malice forethought Manny Mogan, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Ethan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, I've never seen that. Ed, emotional. Bill Thompson.
All right, based on the state's proffer and importantly, based upon defendant's explicit admission to committing these crimes, the court finds there is a factual basis. Therefore, with respect to count 1, burglary, felony, how do you plead, Mr. Kohberger, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Murder in the first degree, as it relates to the murder of Madison Mogan, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 3, as it relates to murder in the first degree for the murder of Kaylee Gonzalez, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 4, the first degree murder of Xana Ethan, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 5, the first degree murder of Ethan Chapin, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Right. The court will find that the defendant understands the nature of each offense and the possible consequences to him of his guilty plea. The court finds that there is a factual basis for the plea and finds the defendant believes the plea to be in his best interest. I find that the plea was given freely, voluntarily, and was intelligently made. I accept the plea. I direct that it be entered. I'll continue the matter for sentencing in this case. I think it was mentioned on the call Monday afternoon, the defense wishes to waive a pretrial investigation. Is that accurate?
Yes, Your Honor.
The state also?
Yes, Your Honor, the state does not believe pre-sentence investigation is needed given the evidence that is available. We want to, though, make sure that all of the victims of the court is sentencing.
Absolutely. And certainly both the state and the defense may present whatever sentencing memorandum and other documents you wish me to consider. The victims will be given an opportunity to provide the statements that they wish to at sentencing. Do we need more than 1 full day for sentencing?
I do not believe so, Your Honor. Obviously we have numerous victims, and we have victims who share unique perspectives on this, and we want to make sure that they all have time to express their feelings to the court. But I believe that if we can start perhaps 8:30 or so in the morning, that we should be able to complete it all in 1 day.
Defense agree with that in terms of the. All right. So as it happens, we have some time reserved in this case in July and August. The week of July 22nd is available. I don't know if that's too soon for the parties, or the next week, the week of August 4 is available. Any preference?
Your Honor, we're prepared as soon as the
state, I believe, would be prepared on the 22nd. Right. We told the victims' families that we're looking at approximately those dates.
All right. So because of the plan to bring in so many jurors to fill out questionnaires, I had ordered that no other trials could take place in this courthouse the week of July 22nd. And so we will use that in terms of the sentencing date because of what I'm sure will be the significant interest of the media and the public and logistics that will be required to make that happen. Without trials going, it'll be a lot easier to do that. So let's pick that week. Why don't we pick July 23rd with the idea that if for some reason we don't finish, we could continue into the 24th. We'll start at 9 in the morning. Does that give your team enough time, Sandra? 9 in the morning? All right. Any concerns with that date?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
No, sir.
All right. Any reason why I should not rescind the non-dissemination order at this time?
Your Honor, I think that given the history of this case, it would be best if that remained in place through sentencing. So we have time to make sure there's the ability to completely answer questions. That would be the state's preference and recommendation.
Would have no objection for the order to remain in place.
I will, at this point, the idea to keep it until sentencing, which time it would be withdrawn in order to get prepared to meet what I'm sure will be the deluge of media requests. That's at least my preliminary decision at this point. We can always revisit if it seems to be, for some reason, I should. That said, obviously, I don't think the defendant, a bond was ever set for the defendant. Were it would be revoked. The prior order allowing him to come in civilian clothes is revoked, given his plea, and in fact now the actual conviction for the crimes. He will continue to be held at the jail pending sentencing. Is there anything else to say?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
I assume that the trial date will be vacated and those 4 jurors will be released.
The trial will be vacated, and I'm sure that the jury commissioner will get word to those that receive their summons that they won't be required to attend. So that said, again, if you would all please wait for the parties and the victims' families and others to leave the courtroom before you do, I would appreciate it. And with that, we're adjourned.
All right, please.
Okay, Ed. Wow. I got 2 pages of notes. Judge Hippler immediately opened up in the court and admonished people for calling and leaving voicemails and writing letters and electronic communication to the court. I don't think I've seen that in recent history. I'm sure it's happened, but they were overwhelmed, according to the judge, with a tremendous amount of phone calls and voicemails, emails, so forth. He also, Ed, apologized to the families for giving such short notice. He did not state that he apologized for sending electronic communication to the families. I think that a phone call from the prosecutor's office would have been in play here. They should have done that. Bill Thompson should have called each individual family and spoke to them, not relied on the email. Ed, your thoughts on those 2 things before we go further?
Yeah, so there was a letter writing and a telephone campaign to try to influence the judge to not accept this and go for the DP. And as you can see, it was overwhelming, and the judge was pissed. And some of that, is the nature of the internet and social media. Next, yes, with regard to the prosecutor and emails and telephone communication, again, I stated this earlier, I would have preferred that the prosecutor did this type of thing face-to-face. Go visit the victims and explain what's going on. But they chose emails and snail mail, apparently, or something to that effect, both maybe.
Yeah, it was an email with an attachment attached to it, according to the Gonzalez family.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't like that at all, not one bit. It seemed to me kind of cowardice.
And cold.
Yeah.
There was nothing personal about that. I mean, we work for the victims and their families. And that holds true for the prosecutor's office as well. So, I was really surprised that they chose that method, because in my eyes, this is a very deep matter. And you saw Bill Thompson. He was upset. He was emotional in that courtroom. His voice was crackling. I apologize for the noise. I am at the office. Next, he went on to talk about thanking his staff. He thanked his staff for all of their hard work leading up to where they were today. He moved on to talk about the sentencing, 10 years plus 4 life sentences to all run, I believe he said concurrent, right? He waives his right to appeal, and he also, life without the possibility of parole. So no appeal, no parole. Sentences are back to back. He's never going to see the light of day. He's going to be locked up for a long time. He also said to Bryan Kohberger, I do not want you to plead guilty to something that you did not do. So he went on and started reading all of the crimes. There was no description from Bryan Kohberger, as we suspected. He did not describe what he did. He did not say, hey, I could tell you where the knife is. I'll tell you where I put it. He did not do that. I don't anticipate him doing that, because what does he have to gain by it? It would just be doing the right thing. And, he is a cold-blooded murderer now by his own admittance, right? He's admitted that. He admitted to that. I don't expect anything good to come out of this guy. So,
well, there's a lot of humble pie that has to be eaten by a lot of by the pro burgers, all right, who are insisting that this guy was innocent. Okay, and so maybe a little self-reflection is in order here, because the evidence was mounting, and I mean the prosecutor touched on it in his statement. Just some of the stuff they had, and didn't mention the totality of everything they had, because he kept it brief. There was far more information and evidence that he didn't discuss that puts this right in Kohberger's lap as the guilty party. I just, I mean, everybody has a right to their own opinions, but you don't have a right to your own facts.
Agreed. I just want to, and I'm sorry that I was looking away while you were talking. I was looking at the video. The ABC Live actually had the family leaving out of court, and I want to see if I could get that up and play for you. There was no statements, but the cameras were following them as they were leaving court. And I think, I don't know, you guys want to see this? I'm not sure if there was a statement or not, but let me just play this for you guys. Hold on a second.
Move on without the stress of a potential, not only a guilty verdict for a death penalty, but many, many years of appeals. So the judge is probably going to just, go forward in as an attempt.
Silent. Is that okay? And if he
Gang activity.
Move to the business of today. For the record, the defendant has
found on the knife sheath. It was next to Madison.
I thought I saw them following him out.
In the bed. Subsequently, an arrest warrant was issued here in Idaho.
All right.
And
I suck on that one. I was watching on the screen as you were talking. It showed a camera following the Gonzalez family out. And actually, here it is up on the screen here in my office. So this is ABC News Live. There's the Gonzalez dad in the corner up by the air conditioner with the hat with the cross on it. Let me see if I can keep that on. Put it on big screen. This is the best that I can do. I apologize. Let's see if we can get a little volume. Oh, he is making statements.
Cindy said she sent you a link.
Okay. Thank you. Asking questions if there was anything that Kohberger said in the courtroom that he had any comment for. Let me take this off. Hold on. Sorry, guys. This is the beauty of live TV. Yeah, Ed, so let me go back to my notes. Judge Hippler, again, he was saying to Bryan Kohberger, I don't want you to plead guilty to something that you didn't do. And he was clear. He went through all of the motions of what he had to do legally in this proceeding. And Bryan Kohberger, on all of the counts, said, I'm guilty, 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 and he went right down the board. Bryan Kohberger filled out a questionnaire. Did you catch on to that, Ed? I just taken these notes. He said that Bryan Kohberger himself filled out a questionnaire when he agreed to this guilty plea and this plea deal. So he didn't elaborate on that questionnaire that he filled out. In his own words, he said, the judge said that you filled out in your own writings a questionnaire. He talked about blood from Kaylee and Maddie on the knife sheath to Mr. Bill Thompson, the prosecutor. He said, I want to be clear, there was no sexual assault. Bill Thompson said that in open court. And then on the back here, he said, no knife has been found. And it talked about, Ed, I'll let you take it from here, about the car, it being dissected, he said, and it was spotless. And he talked about crime scene.
When the FBI got their hands on the vehicle in Pennsylvania and they brought it back to the forensic garage and they tore it apart and didn't find one stitch of evidence in the car, we saw that there were cleanup attempts at the house in Pennsylvania, as well as there were cleanup attempts in Washington, in Pullman, based upon the purchases that were Bryan made the day after the day of the homicide from the supermarket by Costco down by Snake River, where people speculate he tossed that knife into the river down there. And again, they didn't bring out all the evidence there, but there was supposedly security footage from the Costco exterior security cameras showing Kohberger by the dumpsters and the rear of that area, and so forth.
Hey, I wanted to also ask too, Ed, I mean, they didn't give us anything extra. The only thing, that I caught from that extra was about the car and how it was like it was brand new and meticulous. We didn't know about that. We knew that he was caught cleaning up and he had gloves on in the kitchen or inside the residence and stuff was going into baggies. We knew all about that. But one thing that really stuck out for me that I got very upset over is that the judge was not pronouncing one of the victims' names properly. You cannot do that as a judge. That was really, and I mean, I'm paying attention to the details, and anybody in the chat, let me know if I'm off base here, if I'm nitpicking. I don't feel like I'm nitpicking because that's a slap in the face to the families. When you are a judge on the bench and you're not pronouncing the decedent's name properly, last name, that freaked me out. And he did it twice. So, that was upsetting to me,
Yeah, I've been guilty of it from time to time myself, but not intentionally.
Right.
Just, not used to the pronunciation of a specific name.
Look, if we can pronounce these victims' names properly, I think that the judge who's handling the case should be able to. And that's all I want to say. I'll leave it at that. I mean, I don't want to, sound like I'm being nitpicking here, but I mean, I'm thinking about the family, and it's not right. Let's listen in. I got it.
I'm certain that it was just a surreal moment, just a horrid nightmare for the parents. I think it was exceptional that they were there. I'm sure they're, ashamed, horrified, humiliated, disgusted, all the above, but it is their son and they love him. And I think it's good for the justice system to see that we deal with human beings. And, a lot of times our clients don't tell us the truth. The truth doesn't come out until,
Your thoughts on what Kim just had to say.
Fungal. I thought I had it. Anyways, Ed, let's close up by saying, hey, look, the next court date for sentencing is July 23rd. We will be on that 9 a.m. They're going to sentence Bryan Kohberger. We know what it's going to be, 4 life sentences. for each of the victims, 10 years added on to that for burglary. No possibility for him to, go and try to appeal this. He's not going to ever get parole. He's going to be more than likely at the Idaho Max Security Institution. We know that is not going to be a good situation or scenario for him. I hope that he rots from the inside out and has not one good day in prison. So Ed, I want to go to you for final thoughts before we wrap it up.
Well, it is now all but the sentencing is left, and he will be doing his life in prison without the possibility of parole and no appeals, saving the state of Idaho and the family all the grief and suffering and pain associated with appeals and so forth and so on. Yeah. So the next time we see him, he's going to be in prison garb, according to the judge.
Yeah, and he said that. The judge said it. Yep.
So, well, folks, I want to thank you for being here with us and sharing your time with us. Oh, one last thing before I get into that. People talking about, how is it there was nothing in the car? Well, there's several ways this could occur. He prepped the car ahead of time and protected it from anything. He got out of the clothing that he was wearing inside of the house, bagged it up before he got in the car, removing his quote unquote PPE, and therefore none of that transferred to the interior of the car. And then his two cleanup after disposing of the evidence, the PPE, the knife, and whatever else he was carrying inside of that house, his perp bag, that he cleaned up the car at least twice that we know of, once in Washington and then once again in Pennsylvania. So between all of those things, there lies the possibility of why nothing was found. With that said, thanks again for being here for our show. Thanks for your support. Thanks for spreading the word about Ron and I. And always stay safe, stay prepared, and watch your six.
Amen to that, Ed. Thank you, brother. And I just want to say, again, thank you all for tuning in. But at the end of the day, we're going to go full screen here real quick. This is about our victims. Xana Ethan, 20 years old at the time. Her birthday is on the 5th, which is this Saturday. She would have been 23 years old, 23 years young. Ethan Chapman, 20 at the time. His birthday is October 29th, 2002. Madison Mogan, 21 at the time of her murder. Her birthday is May 25th, 2001. And Kaylee Gonzalez, 21 at the time. Her birthday, June 8th of 2001. Our strength, prayers, and positive vibes, and all of our sincere best wishes to these families for strength throughout this trial, the sentencing, no trial, the sentencing. I do believe that they were saved a lot of anguish, a lot of mental anguish by not having a trial. But I also feel like I wanted to see all of the evidence. And it's not about us. It's not about our wants or needs. It's about what the families feel. And I stand with them. I'm right there with them, for the families who feel that this is okay for the plea, and for the families who feel that it shouldn't have been. So again, I encourage you guys to get behind these families. And on behalf of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace, we thank you for joining us. We'll see you on the next one. God bless. Thank you.